Jai Bhim. Good evening, Satish bhai. Live. Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that is why. So we are starting. So we are going to make it a bit of interactive, and also you deliver a, a short 30 minutes or 25 minutes of your lecture. Okay. So we are going with that kind of format. Okay. Okay. So I think uh, it actually gives me immense pleasure that I was thinking for some time that uh, there is so much of discussion in and around the country after the announcement of caste census, but in Bengal, nothing of that sort is happening. So why don't we create a discussion in and host a discussion rather in some platform within West Bengal, and what can be a better platform than Jadavpur University? I immediately thought of my very dear brother Satish. So he's with the Center for the Studies of Social Sciences in Calcutta, which is also our affiliated with the Jadavpur University. So since he's from the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, so and probably so this is why if you are from Telangana or AP, so I don't know.
Andhra.
It's Andhra. So I think Andhra also is so much concerned about the issues of caste, and in fact, I remember that I think you would also remember Satish bhai that Hyderabad has CDS, Center for Dalit Studies, so which is headed by Mallepalli Laxmaya, senior journalist. So when they had wedged this subplan movement, SC/ST subplan movement in the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, Chandrababu Naidu used to be the opposition leader, and he actually went to that platform and extended solidarity with this movement for the SC/ST subplan. Anyway, so that is how I thought that I would get my brother Satish to have an interaction with me on this very important topic, and he has been very kind to agree. I mean, rather immediately agreed with those with the proposal, and that's how we are here. And even though, of course, post Pahalgam, and then subsequently there was a Indo-Pak sort of crisis, and this caste census, proposal, which created for some days a huge sort of discussion, but then somehow went into the back burner. But then I think once again, since Bihar election is approaching and opposition leaders are visiting, caste census, or rather, caste in census has become a very important issue. So I think this is largely, I mean, the background. But if we look at India's democracy, the way it has in the last 75 years or so evolved after the independence, there has not been, a particularly, counting the various castes, which was last exercised in during the British period in 1931 census. But then, in fact, Dr. Ambedkar, when he was the law minister of India, he was in favor of this. But then Congress and other parties, so-called secular parties, they thought that it would create a further division in the society. Though caste itself is a division, rather a very very divisive force, which is already imposed. So we have actually carried caste even post independence, and still the caste is the biggest reality of this country. So in fact, counting caste in census, I mean, there is a lot of confusion whether should we call it a caste census or it's a caste in census, but it's nothing but India's census first time is going to count castes. So caste census is something very, very nuanced and very, very rigorous approach, which has happened recently in Bihar, and that report has been published. It happened in Karnataka. The report has not been made public, and in fact in Telangana. So the report of Bihar's very rigorous socio-economic caste census is only out in front of us, and there is all the data has been published. But since then, in fact, I would say from the last Lok Sabha election, the opposition parties, the opposition's lead INDIA alliance, has tried to create some sort of consciousness and try to bring rather the issues of the margin to the forefront, and that's how they started demanding for counting caste in census, or rather popularly caste census. Though if there is a caste census, it counts everything which has been done in Bihar. So and finally, the government has recently given in to that demand, as the opposition leaders are saying that it has been. But I would say that this whole demand has been a demand which has been raised for long by so many, SC, ST, OBC leaders, particularly. And in fact, I would say that this whole framework has been led by Sahib Kasiram's politics, Hissedari politics, or Bhagidari politics, as it is popularly called. But finally, the central government, which is only mandated to hold a census, they have accepted, but we don't know when that is going to happen. They have not told anything, just announced that the caste would be counted in the next census. There is no fund allocation for conducting that census. There is no framework which has been laid down for this census, and so on. But I am more interested to probably discuss and interact with um, my brother Satish, that how this entire exercise, whenever that happens, or sooner or later, uh, is going to unfold or probably create, and that is why very purposely I have framed the title of this panel as that count of caste in census and India's quest for a representative democracy. So it's that because it probably can create a kind of uh, representational issues has long been neglected in Indian politics, and the issues not only of representation, but the how representation also is very, very important in Indian politics to ensure that affirmative policies, let's say reservation, works in much more efficient ways. In India, today, reservation is a very, very defunct policy, even though in so many places reservation is not implemented. There are so many mechanisms being laid down where, very, very sophisticatedly reservation has been bypassed through contractualization, through privatization, and so on. I remember very recently the opposition leader of India in the Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi, who was visiting Bihar in this upcoming for the campaign of the Bihar election, and there he made very important 3 points in a public meeting where he says that the count of caste in census is not the only thing. It's just opening of the door. It's not, it's not ending there. So it's just a opening of the Pandora's box. We need to basically walk miles after counting this. And in fact, he outrightly made two very, very important. Atindra, হ্যাঁ কিছু বলছো? আচ্ছা আচ্ছা। Okay. Is it fine now? Uh, Hello, Indra, is it better? Yes. Yeah. What I was saying is that, in fact, Lok Sabha's opposition leader of India, Rahul Gandhi, uh, uh, said that caste census would open the door. And then we need to implement two very important. So he has laid down 3 points, three demands. Second demand is very important, that implement reservation in the private education sector, where the higher education, primary and so on. So that has to be implemented. And the third one is implement SC/ST subplan nationally, so that they get a fair share there. In fact, these two are basically rather would also gain, according to me, further traction if once we get the national data on of caste. So I think to just cut short this my portion of the talk, I would say that there is huge anger, in fact, and self-inflicted anger among the so-called upper caste, that counting caste in census is going to create some sort of divisions. It's going to benefit the lower castes and so on. But I think it's a completely misplaced interpretation. It's a very misplaced anger. It's not going to create. It's going to rather very fairly. If the political leaders or the ruling political elites who want, it can create a very uh, 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 redistribute the already hierarchical or unequal resources, or probably whether it's a material or otherwise. So I'm sure that in the recent World Inequality Lab report, many of us are aware that Thomas Piketty and Navin Bharti and Lucas Chancel and others have published a report where they said that India's more than 75% of resources, wealth, billionaires' wealth are actually in the pockets of the upper castes, which is a very big warning for us. But in a democracy, if only top 10% or 5% people can sort of capture the 75% of the resources, it actually is going to create probably this sort of unequal social inequality or economic inequality can actually threaten the very existence of democracy, which is what I feel. And in fact, if we further look at this exercise, in fact, a lot of developed countries, they also count race and, in fact, identities, whether it's United States of America, whether it's UK, Canada, they count this. I mean, a lot of these laymen, they are not aware about it, that probably it's going to create something or the other in India. But these exercises, so those developed countries want to always understand that what is the situation of various communities. So they keep on making social audits of their democracies, which is what has not happened in the last 7.5 decades in India. And finally, probably it's going to happen in India with this announcement sooner or later. But I'm sure that after my brother Satish speaks, we would rather talk a little about, or maybe a bit more about the case of West Bengal, that how in West Bengal probably the lower caste communities, because in Bengal, in the post-colonial situation, in the post-independent Bengal, the lower caste leadership has basically, I mean, of course, there is a sad trajectory of partition. Because of that, it has not gained some sort of traction. But in Bengal, the lower castes political assertions have been suppressed. The lower caste political assertions are actually being, I would say, I wouldn't hesitate to call it muted rather. And the SCs, and largely there was a massive Dalit, assertive Dalit political class that existed in the undivided Bengal, but that subsequently over the last 7.5 years, with the with the rise of the upper caste, the Brahmins, the Baidos and Caste, that sort of, very, very prominent caste, those started dominating West Bengal's politics, culture, media, civil society, academia. So they sort of have captured and thereby the lower castes, the SCs and STs. In fact, in Bengal, the OBCs are in a large numbers, the backward classes, but there is absolutely very, very thin sort of consciousness of caste. In fact, I say that in fact I refute one of Professor Kanche Elaya's comment on West Bengal, where he said that in Bengal, the caste consciousness is absolutely absent. That is the only state. But I say, I actually look at it through a reverse lens and say that caste consciousness is very, very present among the dominant, powerful upper castes of Bengal. But when it comes to the lower castes, the SCs, the STs, and OBCs, the caste consciousness is absolutely absent. And probably no caste can hold the power for long without being very conscious about their caste identities. And it's because that caste identities work in a very Bhadralok manner in Bengal. So this is why it's probably at times very, very invisible. But if you understand the nuance, it is actually visible in one form or the other. So I think with these words, I look forward and I actually call upon and invite and once again thank my brother Satish for agreeing to be part of this panel and to join us for this panel hosted by the Department of International Relations of Jadavpur University. Satish bhai, your comments and thoughts.
Thank you very much, Dr. Subhajit, for inviting me. I mean, it's an opportunity for me also to share some of my ideas. I mean, somehow caste census discussion have been sidelined because of Pahalgam and the tensions between India and Pakistan at the border, as you rightly pointed out. Yeah, but caste discussion on caste, I think, never dies down in India. So in one way or the other, it keeps coming back. It's like a spectacle, like the way Marx said in the context of communism. So even in India, so caste is like a spectacle. It haunts each and every Indian, right? So. Uh, Caste, I feel, I mean, if one sees the meta-historical nature of caste, it would exhibit three important characteristics. It is timelessness, like, so people say that it has been recognized since Vedic times. It is all pervasiveness. I mean, people say that it is monolithic. It can coexist with entire Bharatvarsh. It is changelessness, right? So many of its characteristics were unchanged, uh, down through history. It's because it is resilient, right? So Susan Bailey in her book, she says that it is the only meeting point for every Indian, like it's like a junction. So because it is resilient, it is dynamic because it has several inconsistencies, several contradictions which are there inside the idea of caste. Because of these inconsistencies and the contradictions, okay, so these two also have penetrated into various facets of individual's life. Like it moved to economy, it entered into polity, it entered into culture, it entered into everyday life of an individual, right? So uh, that's why caste keeps coming back in one way or the other, even if we don't like to mention, utter the word caste, it comes back. So I think in recent times, uh, so discussion around caste census have come back. uh, I mean, before we get into discussion on caste census, there are a couple of questions. I mean, lots of people have asked have written on caste census in recent times. I mean, many from all corners of society. But there are certain questions which I think needs to put forward before I present my core arguments. That the discussion which came around on caste census in recent times, especially after the union government announced that it's going to include caste as a category in census. But then there was no further clarifications from the government. Okay, so people started asking questions, raising questions, saying that conducting incorporating caste into census, is it a progressive decision or a divisive decision? Like what sort of apprehensions one could see if we include caste in the census? Or in other words, does enumerating caste will reinforce or transform caste identities or strengthen identities?
Yeah. So it's just opening of the Pandora's box.
Uh, if if caste if it is so important, if it is so essential, then why did political parties for a long period of time, almost 70 years, resisted the idea of incorporating caste into census? That is a quite interesting point Shubhajit also mentioned in his introduction. But then somehow union government announced it, but then so we don't know whether they'll be conducting caste census separately or they're going to incorporate it in decennial census, or we don't know. We are not clear whether there will be census on general category or SC, ST, OBC information statistics, though we have already, uh, including including Jati census. Right. So this is broad. These are some of the questions which came in recent write-ups. But before I get into this recent decision by the union government, I would like to go back, see historically how this whole idea of census, how did it came, like what were the factors, what sort of a role colonial state played, what sort of a role Indian nationalists or important politicians from post-independent India have played, right? So let me begin with this point, that what sort of a role caste played or caste census played during colonial period. Say, as many of us know, that the idea of caste census originated during colonialism, precisely say, in 1871. But mostly, very importantly, the idea of caste became prominent in 1911 census, right? Uh, but then, so there were certain apprehensions. Even now, we can see that, look, a section people for sure attach negative connotation to the idea of caste census because this idea originated during colonial period. Colonial state enumerated precisely for the reason that to classify, categorize, so that it is easy for them to dominate its subjects. Right. That's the purpose behind incorporating caste in census. Okay, so that is also the reason for many of us, like intelligentsia and also activists, who think that okay, so what is the reason behind incorporating caste in census? So is it because to classify, to categorize, to make it more political? So there are so many apprehensions attached to this idea of incorporating caste into census. It was H.H. Risley, I mean, very tall figure, who also proponent of racial theory, was behind this whole exercise, right? Who in fact tried and experimented this idea of census in African continent. First, he actually did it in Africa, and then he came here, requested the colonial state, and somehow succeeded. So this RN theory was strongly demonstrated during his period under his leadership. So the first three varnas, I mean, if you see Hindu social order, Hindu the Chaturvarna, so the first three Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, so where apparently Aryan or have or Aryan origins, whereas Shudra category comes from non-Aryan origins. So to assess these caste, they have used instruments like clippers to measure facial features, size of nose, length of forehead, okay, etc. But by 1911, things have changed radically. Several castes, especially from, say, Shudra, especially from Shudra, Shudras challenged, they have asserted through flood of petitions. There were a number of petitions which have come to Census Commissioner. Risley was also accommodating all these petitions. So he was fine with all these petitions. But at some point of a time, so it was above the thing to take care of all these petitions. If we summarize these two petitions, if we summarize these petitions, there were basically coming on two counts. One, many of these castes started claiming a traditional high status, like that of Brahmin. Say in Andhra, you have Vishwa Brahmins or Nai Brahmins, artisan castes, right? So, or claiming entirely new identity. For example, untouchables started using newer names. Panchama was replaced with Adi Andhra or Adi Dravida. Even now, these names still exist in caste certificates in the southern part of India. So the census started getting too politicized from all corners. So the politicization of caste, okay, so one can see from the early 20th century onwards, uh, particularly from non-Brahmin individuals, right? Uh, so non-Brahmin communities started mobilizing, started developing associations. So they came out with a manifesto after 1911 census. It laid bare the monopoly of Brahmins. Say in Madras Presidency, Brahmin population was 3%, but they have occupied 85% of positions as in bureaucracy, say collectors. 90% of deputy collectors belongs to Brahmins. Politically, all the positions, I mean, 90% of positions were occupied by Brahmins in Congress party. So this is what non-Brahmin movement have actually exposed the Brahminical hegemony in Madras Presidency. So the Dravidian movement, in other words, have emerged around these times. Okay, so through Justice Party, uh, uh, succeeded in coming out with this GIVO called communal GIVO. Right. So, in essence, this communal GO was basically demanding for a restricted representation of the Brahmin caste in the government jobs, admission in educational institutions, political representation, etc. Funny thing is, immediately after independence in 1950, it was dismissed by Supreme Court. Apparently, this is the first amendment to the constitution, right? So the person who is behind this was Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, who is a Telugu Brahmin, okay, whose place is quite close to our my place.
Champakam Darairajam case.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So the collusion of Indian elites and colonial state have actively shaped caste in tune to their benefits. Okay, so whether it is apart from census, I mean, there were several ways through which the Indian elites and colonial state have colluded, okay, to undermine the voice of subaltern or lowered caste representations. You can see it through caste tribe volumes. Um, Caste tribe volume in southern India. Edgar Thurston did it. Okay, so
Mm.
K. Rangachari was his assistant. So Geological Survey of India, uh, Colonel Colin Mackenzie. Okay, so all his assistants were Telugu Brahmins, Niyogi Brahmins. Ramasundari Mantana have extensively worked on this bards assistants. How these assistants are reshaped the knowledge, colonial knowledge processes, right? Uh, Whether it can be caste tribes volumes, gazetteers, census, imperial reports, etc. Through various forms, an attempt was made by Indian elites and colonial state. From 1911 onwards, I mean, around this time, along with Shudras, even Dalits started mobilizing. Ambedkar was the center around that time. So he used 1911 census uh, and then started developing his own struggle for the liberation of Dalits from the clutches of Brahmanism. Right now, after independence, the whole story actually begins from after independence. So the recent decision by the union government was not the recent one. Okay, so right after independence, there were several attempts by the government to bring caste. Okay, so whether to bring or not to bring. So there was so much of drama happened between a party who is in power, a party who is in opposition. Uh, After independence, Nehru was reluctant because Nehru felt that village, family, and caste were representing tradition. So he wants to modernize India. Along with Nehru, even communists actually played important role in upholding this anti-caste spirit, that they wanted India to be casteless. Okay, so that's why they have prepared economic development, they've preferred social welfare programs than addressing caste question. On the other hand, communists saw industrial development as the primary factor. Okay, so Murzban Jal's have a very interesting piece on caste class thing. So where he mentions that caste will wither away or it will be flushed out through the industrial development. So what happened, we know. Okay, so Green Revolution came, 5-year plan. They have actually brought industry, several things they have done it. So in the last 7 decades of castelessness, what they have said, okay, we saw the manifestations of this castelessness. So Satish Deshpande calls this as equality. What sort of equality is this? That by putting equality in forefront, we've completely forgot to address the existing injustices or refuse to differentiate social groups historically or sociologically. Because it is, uh, I mean, that is the reason we have opposed Mandal Commission. We have actually created this movement called Youth for Equality, especially Youth for Equality, which opposed Mandal Commission recommendations. So the paradox here is, instead of addressing the caste discrimination practices, or people who are addressing caste discrimination, they were actually saw as the barriers or carriers of casteism. Yeah. So from 1911 to 2011, I mean, so the whole discussion took place around caste was 2011 Mandal Commission, post Mandal Commission. There was this hyper visibility of Dalits and Adivasis because most of the time they have to be on the streets, on the walls, or their point of discussion in the media rooms, because unless until you come out, you cannot actually um, uh, gain your your rights, right? Because you don't have cultural capital, you don't have economic capital. The only way is to fight and get it. But because of this, there is so much of hyper visibility which came into picture. The other sections were invisible. For them, there is no caste. So Satish Deshpande distinguishes this thing, that general category as castelessness, and whereas SC, ST, OBC, they're all reserved categories, which are actually plunging, holding on caste, right? Um, But somehow around 2010, Kaka Kalekar Commission was appointed. Caste discussion again came back. Uh, Mandal Karpuri Thakur gave reservation in Bihar, both Karpuri Thakur and BP Mandal, Mandal Commission. So both of them comes from Bihar. Okay. But still, they haven't used the term caste. They still retained the term class, citing that even colonial state also used class to assess the progress of untouchables in the name of depressed classes. What is indicating here is that the Indian elite, with all its efforts, somehow resisted using the term caste. Uh, but but to stress my point, the relentlessness of lower caste assertion made them to agree to use caste as a category, right? So the caste census journey began from 1911 to 2020s. Okay. However, I need to make this point clear that even though there was no caste census, caste discrimination didn't stop, right? We can still see Dalit children cleaning toilets because their caste background. We can still see two cups thing still exist in tea stalls. We can still see Dalits are not allowed to drive bullets. Tamil Nadu recent case. Dalits are not allowed to get on horse for Bharat. They are not supposed to wear chappal. Not in India. I mean, numerous cases we keep seeing. So the argument that caste actually will become, by incorporating caste in census, I might bring back the caste question, divide the entire nation based on caste. All these positions are baseless because despite not having caste in from 1940 to 2020, we have witnessed so many cases like this. 20th century, okay, right from the beginning, is the rise of caste-based parties. Okay, so PMK in Tamil Nadu, BSP, SP, so RJD. So there are so many parties dedicated for OBCs. There are parties dedicated to scheduled caste. So castes have never escaped from anyone's life. It's very much there alive. So if not today, okay, so at some point of a time, caste census is going to take place in it inevitably. But before that, government should admit one thing, which I think is very important, that what are the social problems on which government has come out to conduct or to incorporate caste in census. Unless until you make it clear that, look, it is this reason for which we are trying to incorporate caste in census. So the problem has to be stressed, it needs to be analyzed. For that, scientifically collected data is necessary. Otherwise, whatever policies we actually bring out, they'll become either populist schemes, or those policies would become uh, would be developed based on assumptions or impressions, right? So there won't be any clear visible change like they were in last 7 decades, right? uh, it's not that I'm saying that change has not taken place. Certainly, here and there, some changes have taken place. If you see uh, two important points, I mean, Subhajit also mentioned that caste and economy, for instance, or caste and reservations. These are the two important points which keep coming, especially after neoliberalization post 90s. So the champion of this caste and economy debate, especially Dalit capitalism in India, Chandrabhan Prasad, along with Devesh Kapoor, they have published one very interesting work in late 90s. Along with them, I mean, we also have works from Thorat, Ashwini Deshpande, Ramchandran, Preeti Ramurthy, David Moss, all of them in one way or the other trying to assess what sort of a role this reservation has brought in, or the combination of caste and economy played in the lives of Dalits. So Devesh Kapoor's work, Chandraban and Devesh Kapoor's work clearly shows that traditional form of subordination in eastern part of UP is slightly declining, right? But then they also have indicated that none of the Dalits have owned a single tractor in the whole village. So it's not just that traditional form of subordination is the sole thing. Okay, based on that we assess the progress of Dalits, but whether Dalits were in a position to control or own resources, like say tractor, for example. That is one. Another study, Preeti Ramurthy study in Telangana, where Dalits actually stopped working under Reddy's Shudra caste, but peasant agrarian dominant caste in Telugu states. Instead of working under Reddy's, they started doing their own uh, uh, cotton seeds cultivation, cotton seeds production. It's a semi scale industry. So they are not getting so much money out of this cotton seeds production. But when she asked them, you're not getting so much surplus, why are you still doing it? They said, uh, we are now proudly can wear white shirt. White shirt is a symbol of pride. Okay, so a laborer cannot wear white shirt at any point of a time, but a supervisor who is sitting on the bunds is always on white shirt. So for them, white shirt actually differentiates. So they said that is enough for us. I mean, that's a starting point for asserting their right. But then there's a long way to go. So that doesn't actually sum up. The Dalits are also getting into the capitalist mode of production. They are still under the clutches of feudal centric production. Also, even in capitalist mode of production, they are not able to own or control resources. Unless until you have resources, you won't be able to play a major role, right? Um, yeah, I just make this point and then stop. The principle, what I found interesting here in 2020 and 2010 thing, there was so much of debate during UPA 2. Now Congress party, Rahul Gandhi is so provocative. Wherever he is going, he is talking about caste census, etc. Wherever he is going, he's going and saying that it is the progressive step. But in 2010, Congress party, there were multiple positions. Veerappa Moily has a different position. He was the law minister at that time. Chidambaram was home minister. He had a different position. Pradam Mukherjee was finance minister. He has a different position. So everyone were carrying their own position. So
The Prime
Chidambaram said,
Minister himself, Manmohan Singh.
yeah. So Chidambaram said that, look, theoretically, I am not against caste census, but how do we conduct it? So there was too much of discussion how to conduct it, whether we should actually incorporate in the census or should we have another platform. Say that's how they have created the socio-economic caste census. Right. So there were different various platforms which came in. The major problem with Congress party at that time was, I mean, Chidambaram was leading the whole voice. So he said that, look, if we conduct census through caste census through census, 130 years, 150 years history of census might lose its accuracy or integrity. Okay, so instead of that, why don't we actually conduct caste census through NPR, National Populist Register, right? But then that also got sidelined. Then later on, they brought this BPL. So they combined BPL and caste census and formed this SEC, Socioeconomic Caste Census, under the leadership of Rural Development Ministry as a nodal agency. In 20 like by 2015 the report has come out. By then they have lost power. BJP came into power, right? BJP also sat on it for some time, and then they've appointed Arvind Panagriya, economist, so to study that report more carefully. But then no one saw the report as of now. We don't know what happened to it. But the important point was that was the time there was huge resistance against caste census. Okay, right.
Within the
So
Congress party.
within the Congress party, and also civil society also have responded quite, resisted quite vehemently. They formed one group called Meri Jati Hindustani, right? So by saying that the idea of caste census is very anti-nationalist. The term anti-national was not so popular term at that time, but they said that if you conduct caste census, it is essentially anti-nationalist. Instead of saying your caste, they suggested that people should uh, say that they're Indian, that you don't mention any caste. Apparently, this term Meri Jati Hindustani was popularized by Amitabh Bachchan. Right. So there were several positions. Even Bal Thackeray came out and said something that, that instead of doing it on caste, why don't you do it on religion, so that Pakistanis or Bangladeshis, all of them can be identified and we can send them out. How can we conduct caste census when the mixed marriages, intercaste marriages have been happening quite for some time? So wife is different caste, husband is different caste, so there's so much of entanglement around it. uh, there were too many positions and oppositions which have come around that time, right? But uh, yeah, now the story is slightly different. I think all voices seems to be coming together to include caste in census. Let's see how they will be. I mean, already we have census in Bihar, as you mentioned, right? So Bihar social structure is quite visible through numbers. Telangana social structure is quite visible through numbers. Orissa has conducted caste census, but they are yet to release. Karnataka has conducted, they are yet to release. Uh, Sorry?
No. You go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So only thing is the bigger states like, say Gujarat, West Bengal, or Tamil Nadu, we don't know what is the status of these states. Uh, okay, so I think if the governments of these states also put their efforts in bringing caste census, it would be a very egalitarian, empowering thing. Um, it's not it's not going to be such a big dent, or that you don't have to break your heads or think so much about the processes involved in conducting census. Yogendra Yadav or Gail Lomwith actually in her article mentions that you've conduct census at an individual basis, allow them to take decision about their caste. Okay, so that is what Telangana government also did. Very scientifically, they have done, I feel, by appointing Thomas Piketty as the chairman to analyze the data. So, but here the question here is, I will conclude my thing, that whether caste census will annihilate caste or consolidate caste. I mean, will be depending upon how we are going to analyze the data. Okay, so Even if we don't have data, local politicians know about each and every person's caste. So there are also various ways through which one can collect data. What I suggest, another important point I would like to flag here, the union government, instead of restricting itself to including caste and census, they should also extend it, right? In various other data banks. Say, for instance, agricultural census, they can actually incorporate household household consumption expenditure survey. They should include caste here also. You have periodic labor force survey, NSSO for instance, All India Survey on Higher Education. So there are several data banks. If government can include caste here, it would be very easy for social scientists, sociologists who are working on caste quite seriously, uh, so that to make society more just. I'll stop here. Thank you very much, Shubhajit, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my points here. Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. In fact, we can take up the last point of including caste in creating more and more data banks by doing in fact, agricultural census. I mean, also, in fact, one of the important aspect that I always feel is land holding, where we need to probably look at, because there have been micro studies are being done. Sorry, not macro studies are being done, where landlessness among the lower caste, especially the Dalits, is a big pandemic. I mean, there are the communists and others say that they have done land distribution in West Bengal. Atindra, am I having some scratchy, or my audio is clear? Is it okay? Clear. Okay. I think so. I think Satish bhai, your audio is on, or somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah. So I think land census is in fact a very important aspect that you probably also need to look at. The Bihar census has laid bare this landlessness among the lower castes, especially the Dalits, Adivasis, and the extreme backward classes, the EBCs. In fact, in fact, they have done a tally with the population percentage of various castes with their land holdings. And there, the Bhumihars, which has a very marginal number of population percentage in Bihar, but they hold huge lands. So is the case with Brahmins and probably Rajputs. But when this the data of the lower Dalit caste, let's say Paswans and in fact Musahars, which is at the very lowest strata of Bihar's societal hierarchy, they are their entire, you know, landholding is something which is very grave. There is no, I mean, we don't have those datas nationally, and we need to create a national data bank for this. And also, in fact, Satiswai, your audio is on, probably creating noise or what? Is it? Okay. So this, in fact, I would also like to draw your attention and comments, brother, that on the Bengal situation. In fact, I wrote I mean, a very, uh, I mean, uh, that's a rough commentary in the print last year, where I actually called that why West Bengal's politics and culture, etc., they need to be de-Brahminized, and the lower caste aspirations should take the forefront. So, where in fact, I have a very interesting data from the 2011 census of West Bengal. And this is from this shows that West Bengal ranks among the top two states with the highest percentage of scheduled castes. And census data actually reveals a stark demographic disparities between upper caste communities and the SC STs. In fact, largely the lower OBCs. While the SC actually in West Bengal comprised the 23%, roughly 23.5% in West Bengal, but they share in the urban areas, especially in Kolkata population of the SCs is only 5.4%. So that means most of the scheduled caste of Bengal, or you can call it a Bengali Dalits, they live in the rural areas. That means the economic mobility of this community, of the Bengali scheduled caste communities, is absolutely low. And there has been very slow or probably no mobility. And this probably needs to be discussed by creating host of data banks that you have said and national data banks. In fact, it shows the STs, those are, statewide, they have 5.8% in Bengal, according to the 2011 census. But in the state capital, which is Kolkata, they live only 0.2%. So who are those communities that live in the posh locations of Kolkata and in other urban centers of the districts, especially Kolkata, let's take this, or Newtown and and surrounding areas of Kolkata, and probably newly built another, I mean, metro or smart city like Rajarhat, Newtown, and that area. So this is a very grave sort of data that we have. Even though this is a very little data, this is a very small sort of data, but that itself exposes that Bengal is a very progressive state, West Bengal, which probably one of the topmost regressive state when it comes to the democratic development of, democratic distribution, I would call it. Of, in fact, I'm purposely not quoting any of those Bengali writers researching on caste because of the most of the gauge is on the lower caste, whether the Bandyopadhyayas and Chattopadhyayas have done, and the subaltern studies. Professor Suryakant Duwakmure calls it subaltern studies syndicate, but I wouldn't call that. But I mean, they have done. But in fact, Professor Umesh Bagare and Yaspal Joganand of IIT Delhi, Yaspal actually has translated Umesh Bagare's article in Marathi, where they have challenged this the way subaltern studies has evolved in by the Bengali upper caste intelligentsia. And it's a fantastic article published in Project Muse of the Princeton University. So, but what I again come back to this point that on the one hand, when Bihar's caste census has revealed so many things. In fact, in the afternoon, I was talking with Dr. Rajsekhar Gundru, a very senior IAS. So he was saying that how are you going to deal with your judiciary when your census data reveals stark realities? Because your judiciary has created a Indra Sahni Bible. So, and this is a fantastic point that has quickly very intriguing. Because, in fact, if you have seen, Satish, that in the Bihar, after the Bihar caste census, the Bihar state government, which was then in alliance with Congress and RJD, they had immediately increased the reservation on the basis of their population, like for SCs, STs, and OBCs. But immediately the Patna High Court and then subsequently the Supreme Court of India has struck down the Bihar government's this thing. And they have cited again Indra Sahni judgment. In fact, Indra Sahni judgment looked at the OBC reservation. It is not also applicable on the SC, STs, but the Indra Sahni judgment is an absolute fiction that has been judicial fiction that has been created. In fact, Constitution of India nowhere says that there has to be a cap on the reservation. But Indra Sahni has created that fiction that you have to But when it came to EWS for the upper caste, giving reservation to the upper caste, they have created a very kind of microscopic allay to sort of not address this their own 50% cap. So Dr. Bondru was saying that how are you going to challenge this 50% cap? That needs to be first removed, which is a very big obstacle in front of us. In fact, how probably the governments are going to change their policies in tune with the with this data. In fact, on the basis of the deprivations and humiliations and in fact the material resources that they have. In fact, if you look at Bengal, Bengal has today. In fact, if the next census, whenever that happens, the Bengal is going to reveal. I'm telling you so many things. If it is done properly or if it comes more scientifically and all that. In Bengal, whether it's the opposition leader right from the independence or chief minister or the speaker, there has not been an SC or ST who has been ever appointed by the progressive communists and in fact now TMC. There has not been any of those have solved. In fact, you would see that the top departments, top cabinet ministers are not from the lower castes. In fact, the OBC consciousness is also never been addressed properly. I mean, they are very, very skeptical about this OBC consciousness, which probably in the last Lok Sabha election, BJP came and tried to, but Bhadralok intelligentsia, those are mostly from the upper caste Bengalis. They are very, very, skeptical about raising those issues, except doing some sort of very specific partition refugees of the lower caste Bengalis and post-partition Bengals and so on. So, but the representation question, the question of qualitative representation in academia, in politics, and in culture is something which is absolutely, I'm sure, marginalized. And I just want your reflections, if you have any, on this, because you are here, for quite some time, and I'm sure that you are a keen observer through those lens.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you, Subhajit. I mean, I totally agree with you with regards to with regards to this spatial modality. Uh, like, I mean, for Dalits, space play a major role. Right? So in Satyanarayana, the Dalit Studies edited book, Ramnarayan Rawat and Satyanarayana. So when they're trying to articulate for a subdiscipline or a discipline called Dalit Studies, the first point they bring forth is that spatial modality play a major role in the lives of Dalits. So unless until you've study more scientifically, more theoretically about space, caste and space, we might not be able to understand what sort of a role Dalits, both genealogically and epistemologically, what sort of a role Dalits are undergoing in their everyday social life. I mean, it's starking to see uh, the presence of Dalits and Adivasis in urban spaces. Okay, where Ambedkar actually, the Ambedkar statue signifies that leave village and go to urban areas, because caste, I mean, metaphorically, caste in urban spaces is anonymous. Okay, so where you don't have to undergo the clutches of, feudal lords, upper caste, Brahmin ritual superiority. Uh, but urban space is totally in and out occupied by upper caste. So there is no place for Dalits. Wherever you go, there are already people. So you're screened in and out, both physically and mentally, right? So force Dalits and Adivasis are forced to live in rural areas in the same wretched life. So I totally agree with you in that regard. Um, this outsider insider thing. I mean, when you said uh, subaltern syndicate, I mean, citing Wagmore, I also have read that piece, Bagade's piece. Fascinating piece, a proper summary review of subaltern studies. Uh, it's almost, I think, gone now, but what is interesting here is that Bandyopadhyay's Chatterjee's, it is high time for not only Bandyopadhyay's Chatterjee's here, but also Iyers, Iyengars, whoever is working on Dalits. Now they have to think uh, about how their caste practiced untouchability. Okay, so the gaze has to be reversed. I mean, there is one sociologist called Martin Nicholas who said that study the, I mean, you have to study the elites for the needs of the working class.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would like to replace elites and working class here.
Yes.
Okay, so how and in which way you and your family, your generations have practiced untouchability? What are the processes involved? I mean, don't show sympathy or empathy on Dalits by doing research on them. You tell us how your family or your caste have practiced. Okay, because this insider and outsider debate, theoretical Brahmin, empirical Shudra, we've been hearing it from 90s. Dalits have entered into higher educational institutions. They are pretty in a position to study about themselves. So now the question here is that you please tell us all the atrocities you have practiced over a period of time. So the gaze needs to be reversed. We don't need any upper caste gaze on Dalits, right? This is another point. I mean, with regards to judiciary, I feel Balagopal made one very interesting comment with regards to subclassification long time back when he was alive. And so he said that judiciary is also like Agrahara, filled with all Brahmins. Reservation is a social issue. It's a caste-based, it has come out from a caste-based issue. Now, why are we actually taking it to? Why are we converting it into a judicial issue? He said that the idea of reservation has to be handled at a humanistic level, okay, more social level, not at a jurisprudence or not at a legal level. Uh, this is also a problem with, I mean, law is all about
Mm.
interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that hermeneutics they play a major role in terms of giving justice, right? So it's all about interpretation. American Constitution, for a long period of time, saw the problem through color. So for whites, judgment is to be different. For blacks, judgment is to be different. The Until critical race studies, critical race theory came in, American Constitution was more colored, right? Which is not the case, at least with Indian Constitution, thanks to Ambedkar's involvement. But still, Indira Sahani, I mean, right from her to so many people who are becoming obstacles uh, for the questions related to social. So they're making it more legal and more complicated. But these questions have to be understood more densely, deeply, for sure.
In fact, the recently one of very prominent lawyer who is now DMK's MP in Rajya Sabha, P. Wilson, he asked a question to the law minister, to the government in Rajya Sabha, that tell us the representational structure of the appointments of the judges in the high courts and the Supreme Courts since 2018. So since 2018, the Collegium, which appoints the judges in the High Courts and Supreme Court of India, appointed 684 judges in the last 5-6 years. And out of 684 judges, 684, only 21 judges are Dalits. That means 3%. Whereas their population is around 23-4%. Now it would be more. 2011 census says 23%. ST judges are only 14 in the out of 684. Only 14, that roughly is 22%, while their population percentage is around 7%, 8%. OBC judges is again even has not crossed 100. It's 82. So that means 11%. Now, the Bihar and Telangana and other sort of census, we are getting a hint that they are more than 45%, or in some places more than 50% population. So now they have 11% of only mayor representation. So 40% of denial, let's say. Now upper caste Brahmin judges out of 684 are 567. So they enjoy 82% of reservation in judiciary, whereas their population would be roughly 16%, less than 20%. They enjoy 82%. So this is something, I mean, which is probably the judiciary is a place where all sorts of verdicts are coming, which is antagonistic to the question of reservation. In fact, the way they are subclassifying castes of the SC/STs, which is not meant for it, in fact, and in fact, the way they are putting cap on the increasing of reservation, in fact, the way probably I think if some upper caste advocate takes this announcement of counting caste in census to the Supreme Court, I think that Supreme Court bench can say that no, don't count it. I mean, there is nothing like that in the constitution. Something or the other fictional argument will surely come. So, but something which is horrible is that in the lowest ranking jobs, which is the cleaning of water tanks, sewer cleanings, sewerage, and manhole, and so on, there 92% reservation is for the lower castes, the SC/ST OBCs. They are the ones those clean your tea and septic tanks and and so on. So these are the and these menial jobs are not done by the upper castes and Brahmins. There is absolutely they are not. In fact, in Bengal, in the case of this burning the dead bodies, few of us have had exposed few years back along with Anurag Bhaskar. So we saw that Bengal government constantly advertises the vacancies for the dead body burnings as calling them domes. We need domes. Now they have sort of attached the caste of dome, since dome caste people are the ones, just like the Valmikis are mostly doing the sweeping and cleaning jobs in the municipal corporations. So domes are mostly associated with the dead body burning things. Now they have stigmatized this dome community of Bengal with the dead body burning jobs. And imagine this, so that's why that we have collected more than 50-60 such municipal corporations advertisements dug out, and all of them, they mentioned that we need domes. And now dome is, so can you call that we need Brahmins for dead body burnings? I mean, this is how they associate and stigmatize, and this is an institutionalized imposition of caste. That article got some good traction, and we wrote letters to the High Court Chief Justice and so on. Recently, they have in a cabinet meeting took cognizance of that, and they have said that we are not going to call them domes, because dome is a Dalit community. And this is how, so, I mean, this is one glimpse into that how Bengal is actually not a very progressive society. I mean, and how this is very starkly casteist. In fact, if you look at other day, I was thinking of raising this issue of single post reservation, like the posts of directors in the IITs and IIMs and NITs and vice chancellors in the universities, directors in the research institutes, and members of the UGC, members of the UPSC. Most of them are actually Brahmins and upper caste. So this is probably one reason we need to actually push counting caste or caste sort of census in each and every sort of profession and other spaces, to understand that how caste actually plays the role and creates hierarchy there. I mean, I don't know why there is a inflicted guilt created by the and probably the rise of the neo manus. Probably, in fact, these days they are not ready to accept Dr. Ambedkar as a chief architect of the Indian Constitution. They are pitting B.N. Rao. I mean, how that happens and all that. So this is something probably should counting of caste in census would put this whole discussion in rest, as you were saying that in fact the way it was Risley, his entire, he has written two big volumes on West Bengal, in fact, while he was doing this. So, and these are very stark reminders of that how counting of caste or doing a caste census rather, like Bihar, can actually expose a lot of things that probably the privileged, oppressive castes want to hide. I think, yeah. I think with your last thoughts, you can conclude.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Subhajit. I mean, Bengal for sure is appears to be progressive, but it is not. If it is progressive, Ashok Mitra at some point of a time, civil
Yes.
servant, I mean, he made a very interesting statement that there must be something wrong with the state. If it is claiming to be progressive secular, it should have actually produced people like Kamraj Nadar, Bota Singh, or Jagajan Ram. It didn't produce. So therefore, it is pretty visible naked to everyone that it is not progressive. It is just camouflaging its identity. It is masking with Bengali nationalism or so and so forth, including Jyoti Basu. I mean, he was the one who made this statement that there is no caste
Caste.
in Bengal. So it sums up that.
That's why they have never implemented the 27% OBC reservation. Here we have 17%.
Yeah, yeah. So that's for sure. We've never respected Jogen Mandal for that matter. I mean,
Yes.
so there's so much of hostility towards caste question. By not talking about caste, they think that there is no caste.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have read this Dwaipan Sen's work, The Decline of Caste Question. So
Mm-hmm.
he makes this very interesting point that death of Mondal is
Mm.
the death of Dalit voice, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Dalit politics.
Dalit politics. So
Yeah.
we don't see Dalit politics playing so prominent role either after independence or even for that matter during colonial period. Madras presidency was booming with non-Brahmin, anti-Brahmin activities.
Yeah.
Similarly, with Bombay presidency, I mean, you see, Hindu Mahasabha came there. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so Dalit Panthers movement came there. Okay, so it has produced uh, various factions, right? Bombay presidency, Madras presidency, but somehow Bengal presidency was completely silent on this caste question. Socially, it was because it was occupied by people like Ishwarachandra Vidyasagar
Mm-hmm.
or you know Ramakrishna Paramahamsa.
Mm. Yeah.
So, therefore, they have actually taken the whole question, subverted the whole question differently.
Yeah, yeah, true. Right. Yeah, in fact, to tell you further that, in fact, Bengal has a host of anti-caste or reformers. I mean, from across the communities, we have our own Ravidas, we have our own sort of Kabir. I mean, Jogen Mondal is one who has actually done. I mean, his entire life trajectory of his politics is something which probably should be brought to the forefront in terms of his urge to democratize the undivided Bengal's politics. But the ideological social fathers have been many in Bengal. I mean, from Sundar, from the South 24 Parganas to, we have Panchanan Verma for Rajbangsis. We have in the South 24 Parganas, we have host of these people called Raicharan Sardar for Pondro community, and then we have Mahendranath Kaurun and Manindranath Mondal. These are big names, but the problem is that Bengali upper caste intelligentsia has actually suppressed them, and they are not being taught in the regular, primary textbooks and so on. So probably we can hold that discussion on some other day, probably by organizing a physical conference in Jadavpur campus itself, and we can do that. Yeah, I mean, I thank you so much, brother Satish, that for joining us, and I think uh, we conclude here. And I thank everyone for patiently hearing us. Thanks.
Thank you very much once again, Shubhajit. Thank you for hosting me.